The final bill from the hospital felt like a brick. Not because of the amount I'd planned for that, but because of what it represented. It was the last formal artifact of a life that had included two people. Now it was just me and my daughter, Lily. My wife, Chloe, was in the family court system, screaming about assets I never told her we had. She was about to find out that the man she thought was a simple framer, a man she could leave with a newborn for a girls' trip, was the one who signed the paychecks for the entire company. She thought she was trading up. She had no idea what she was throwing away. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Marcus. I'm 32 years old, and I own a construction company. To most people, including my wife of 2 years, I was just a lead framer for that same company. I liked the simplicity of it. I liked the feel of the hammer in my hand, the smell of sawdust, the tangible result of a day's work. I drove a 10-year-old truck because it was reliable and paid for. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house that I'd bought and paid off before I ever met her. It was a good life, a quiet life. It was the life I had always wanted. Chloe wanted something different. I knew she was ambitious, that she came from a family that valued appearances, but I thought my stability and devotion would be enough. Her mother, Eleanor, made no secret of her disappointment. She'd look at my calloused hands with a barely concealed grimace. "Chloe is used to a certain standard, Marcus," she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension. "Make sure you can provide it." I always just nodded. I was providing. I was providing more than they could ever imagine. But my provision wasn't loud. It wasn't a leased German sedan or a designer watch. It was a foundation solid and deep that I was building for my family. When Lily was born, everything changed for me. The first time I held her, this tiny, 7-pound creature, the world snapped into a new kind of focus. Every beam I hoisted, every nail I drove, was for her. I worked my 8 hours on site, then came home and took over. I did the night feedings so Chloe could sleep. I changed diapers, learned to swaddle, and mastered the art of rocking a fussy baby into silence. Chloe was recovering, and I was happy to shoulder the burden. "You just rest," I'd tell her. "I've got this." But as the weeks passed, her recovery looked more and more like detachment. While I was memorizing Lily's different cries, Chloe was glued to her phone, scrolling through images of friends on yachts and in exotic locations. Her sighs grew heavier. "God, look at Jessica in Cabo," she'd mutter, shoving the phone in my direction. "Must be nice. Her husband actually takes her places." I'd look down at Lily asleep on my chest and think, "I'm right here. We're right here." But it was clear she saw us as an anchor, not a harbor. The conversations with her mother became more frequent, whispered and urgent on her end of the couch. I'd hear snippets as I walked by with a dirty diaper or a freshly warmed bottle. "He just doesn't get it, Mom. Stuck. This little house. I can't live like this forever." Each word was a small, sharp sting. I was building an empire for her, for our daughter, brick by brick. But all she could see were the 4 small walls she felt trapped in. She saw my dirty work boots by the door as a sign of my station, not the symbol of the labor that kept our lives secure. Then came the announcement. It was a Tuesday evening, exactly 3 months after Lily was born. I'd just finished giving Lily a bath and was rocking her in the nursery, humming a tuneless song. Chloe walked in, phone in her hand, a strange, bright look in her eyes I hadn't seen in months. "I need a break," she said, not as a request, but as a declaration. "The girls are doing a last-minute trip to Miami, just for a long weekend. I need to feel like myself again." I looked from her excited face down to Lily's peaceful one. A weekend felt like an eternity. "Chloe, Lily is only 3 months old. Are you sure?" "That's the point, Marcus," she snapped, her voice sharp. "I've been a mom, a cow, a prisoner in this house for 3 months. I need this. You can handle it for a few days, can't you?" "It's not that hard." It wasn't that hard. The words hung in the air. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, the endless cycle of feeding and changing and soothing. None of it was hard, apparently. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, but I pushed it down. Maybe she was right. Maybe she did need a break. Maybe if she got this out of her system, she'd come back and see what she had right here. Okay, I said quietly. If you think it'll help. Okay. Her relief was instantaneous and absolute. She practically flew out of the room to start packing, calling her friends, her voice giddy. For the next 2 days, the house was filled with a frantic energy. She bought new outfits, a new suitcase. She barely looked at Lily. When she left that Friday morning, she gave me a quick, distracted kiss on the cheek and brushed a finger over Lily's head. Be good for Daddy, she cooed, then turned and walked out the door without a backward glance. The house fell silent. It was just me and my daughter. The first day was fine. We had our routine. I fed her, played with her on the mat, took her for a walk in the stroller. It was peaceful. That night, after I finally got her to sleep, I sat on the couch in the quiet dark. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. Girls trip, you watch the baby. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a how are you doing? It was an instruction, a delegation, like I was the hired help. I stared at the words, the casual dismissiveness of them cutting deeper than any of her side complaints. I didn't reply. A few hours later, another text came through. A picture of 4 champagne glasses clinking together. Finally. Fun, she wrote. I recognized her friend Jessica's hand, but something about the lighting felt off for a Miami nightclub. It looked like daylight. The next morning, I was cleaning out the junk drawer in the kitchen when my fingers brushed against a folded piece of paper. It was a printout, a travel itinerary. My blood ran cold as I unfolded it. It wasn't for a trip to Miami. It was for 2 first-class, non-refundable tickets to the Maldives. The departure date was the day she left. The return was for 10 days later, not 3. And the second passenger wasn't one of her girlfriends. The name on the ticket next to hers was Julian Croft. Julian Croft, the slick real estate developer she'd mentioned a few times. The one whose wife had supposedly left him. The one who, according to Chloe, understood ambition. The itinerary had been booked 6 weeks ago, before she'd ever mentioned needing a break. This wasn't a last-minute trip. It was a planned escape, an affair, an audition for a new life. I stood there in the silent kitchen, the paper trembling in my hand. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of love I had poured into our family felt like a joke. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. I walked into the nursery and looked down at Lily, sleeping in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling in the soft glow of the nightlight. She was so perfect, so innocent, and her mother had abandoned her for a man she barely knew, for a fantasy life built on lies. The hurt was immense, a tidal wave of betrayal that threatened to drown me. But as I watched my daughter breathe, something else rose to the surface. It was cold, hard, and clear. It was rage, but a quiet, focused rage. This wasn't a time for screaming or breaking things. This was a time for strategy. She had underestimated me. She thought I was just a simple man she could use and discard. She had no idea who she had just crossed. I folded the itinerary and put it in my pocket. I took a deep, steadying breath. The emotional part of my marriage was over. The logistical part had just begun. I picked up my phone, but I didn't text Chloe. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed, David Chin, my oldest friend, and my lawyer. He answered on the second ring. Marcus? Everything okay? It's Saturday. David, I need you, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. She's gone. She lied about where she went and who she's with. I have proof. I need to know the first step. There was a pause on the other end of the line. David knew me. He knew I didn't do drama. If I was calling him like this, it was serious. Okay, Marcus, he said, his voice all business. Don't do anything. Don't call her. Don't text her. We'll meet Monday morning. My office. 9 o'clock. And bring the proof. I hung up the phone. I looked around the house, this home I had built, this life I had cherished. It all looked different now, like a stage set for a play that had reached its tragic conclusion. Chloe thought she was on vacation. In reality, she was on a 10-day head start to her own ruin. And I was going to methodically, quietly, and completely dismantle the world she thought she was building for herself. My new full-time job wasn't just being a father to Lily. It was protecting her from her mother. Monday morning, I was in David's office at 8:45. I'd arranged for a trusted neighbor, a retired grandmother, to watch Lily for a few hours. Walking into David's sleek, downtown law firm felt like crossing a threshold into a new reality. I was still wearing my work jeans and a plain t-shirt, but I no longer felt like the simple framer. I felt like a client, a man with a purpose. David greeted me with a grim look and a firm handshake, leading me into a conference room with a sweeping view of the city. He poured 2 cups of coffee. "Talk to me," he said, leaning back in his chair. I laid everything out on the polished mahogany table. The printed itinerary, the screenshot of her Miami text. I explained the timeline, her growing discontent, her mother's influence, the name Julian Croft. I spoke without emotion, delivering the facts like a field report. When I was done, I pushed a bank statement across the table. "This is our joint account," I said. "She's been spending freely. There's a charge from a resort in the Maldives that posted this morning for over $2,000. David looked at all the documents, his expression hardening. "This is clean, Marcus. This is textbook abandonment and infidelity. The court will not look kindly on a mother leaving her 3-month-old for a 10-day affair." He paused, looking at me intently. "So what do you want? Do you want to scorch the earth? Or do you want to be fair?" I thought of Lily. I thought of Chloe's casual cruelty. "I want to protect my daughter," I said, my voice low and steady. "I want full custody. The house is mine, premarital, paid in full. But the business, she doesn't know about the business. She thinks I'm an employee." A slow smile spread across David's face. He had helped me set up the LLC years ago. He was the only other person who knew the full extent of my financial situation. "Oh, this is going to be interesting," he said. "Her lawyer is going to come in demanding half of a framer's salary. They'll be blindsided." "That's the plan," I confirmed. "I don't want her to know. Not yet. I want her to proceed as if I'm the man she thinks I am. Let her show her true colors. Let her expose her greed." David nodded, already sketching out a plan on a legal pad. "Okay. First step. Financial separation. We need to protect your assets from any further. Vacation spending. I want you to go to the bank today. Open a new account in your name only. We'll draft a letter to your company's payroll department, which is you, I know, to redirect all your future income into that new account. We'll move the bulk of the funds from the joint account into it, leaving a few thousand in there so she doesn't get suspicious when her card is declined. We'll frame it as protecting marital assets from dissipation." "Done," I said. "Second," he continued, "we hire a private investigator. I have the best. We need photos. We need confirmation that she is with this Julian Croft. We need to document this trip from start to finish. Every social media post she or her friends make, every charge, every location. Do it," I said without hesitation. The cost was irrelevant. Third, we start drafting the divorce petition and the motion for sole legal and physical custody. We'll cite abandonment, marital waste, and infidelity. We won't file it yet. We wait until she gets back. We let her walk right into it. Over the next week, I operated like a machine. I spent my days on the job site, overseeing a new multifamily housing project, my mind 1,000 miles away, plotting and planning. I came home every evening to Lily, and in her presence, all the cold strategy melted away. I was just her dad. I fed her, bathed her, read her stories she couldn't yet understand. Her gurgles and smiles were the fuel that kept me going. In those moments, I knew I was doing the right thing. Chloe's texts came intermittently. They were breezy and self-absorbed. Pictures of white sand beaches. A selfie of her with a tropical drink, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Soaking up the sun. "You wouldn't believe the view." I'd reply with short, simple messages. "Sounds nice. Lily is doing well. Have fun. Each text was a piece of evidence. Each one painted a clearer picture of a woman completely disconnected from her life and responsibilities. The PI, a discreet ex-cop named Frank, was worth every penny. He had contacts everywhere. Within 48 hours, I had a preliminary report. He confirmed Chloe and Julian Croft were staying at a 5-star overwater bungalow resort in the Maldives. He sent me a grainy long-lens photo of them having dinner on a private deck. Seeing them together, laughing, it didn't even hurt anymore. It was just data. It was proof. Meanwhile, Chloe was becoming bolder. Believing I was the same simple, accommodating husband, she started sending me links to real estate listings. Enormous, multi-million-dollar homes in gated communities. Saw this and thought of us. She texted with a link to a 6-bedroom monstrosity. Time for an upgrade, don't you think? We deserve it. We deserve it. The audacity was breathtaking. She was on a lavish vacation with her lover, planning how to spend my money on a new life that presumably included him. I saved the text. It was another nail in her coffin. Her mother called me midweek. Marcus, Eleanor began, her voice syrupy sweet. I'm so glad Chloe is finally getting a proper break. She was so stressed. You really must understand the kind of pressure a woman like Chloe is under to maintain a certain lifestyle. I'm just focused on Lily, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Yes, of course, she said dismissively. But when Chloe gets back, you two need to have a serious talk. That little house, your job. It's not enough for her. A man needs to provide. I hope you're thinking about your family's future. I think about it every single day, Eleanor, I replied. The double meaning was lost on her. I hung up the phone, my resolve hardening even further. They were a matched set, blinded by avarice. The 10 days crawled by. Frank, the PI, delivered his final report. It was a thick manila envelope filled with photos, travel records, and detailed notes of Chloe and Julian's activities. He had even uncovered something about Julian Croft. The slick developer was leveraged to the hilt. He was drowning in debt, using investor money to fund his lavish lifestyle. He wasn't an upgrade. He was a grifter looking for his next mark. And Chloe, with her perceived access to a stable, hard-working husband's income, was it. The irony was almost too much. On the day she was due to fly back, I cleaned the house. I made sure everything was perfect. I prepared a simple dinner, the kind she usually complained about. I was calm. The storm was coming, and I was the eye of it. She walked through the door around 7 in the evening, tanned, glowing, and laden with shopping bags. She looked surprised to see me so composed. I think she expected me to be angry, or at least flustered from a week and a half alone with a baby. Hey, she said, dropping her bags. I'm back. God. I'm exhausted. She peered into the living room where Lily was asleep in her bassinet. She was good. She was perfect, I said. Dinner's ready. She looked at the pot of stew on the stove and her nose wrinkled slightly, but she didn't comment. The entire evening was surreal. She chattered on about Miami, about the clubs, the shopping, the funny things her friends had said. She was a surprisingly good liar, weaving a tapestry of falsehoods with ease. I just nodded, asked a few simple questions, and let her dig her own grave. A few days passed in this strange détente. She was waiting for me to bring up her trip to argue. I was waiting for the right moment. Came on a Wednesday night. She was scrolling through her phone, sighing dramatically. Marcus, we need to talk, she said, putting the phone down. That house I sent you? I think we should go see it. We need to start living like adults. Your framing job is fine, but it's not going to get us there. You need to ask for a raise, a big 1-inch. I looked at her, my face a placid mask. Before we talk about new houses, we need to talk about our current finances. I walked to my desk and picked up a single file folder. I sat down opposite her at the kitchen table and slid it across to her. Her brow furrowed in confusion. She opened it. The first page was the joint credit card statement, with the $2,000 charge from the Four Seasons Landa Giravaru highlighted in yellow. The second page was the flight itinerary to the Maldives with her name and Julian Croft's. She stared at it, the color draining from her face. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "This isn't Miami," I said. My voice was quiet, devoid of accusation. It was a simple statement of fact. Her first instinct was to lie. That's a mistake. My travel agent must have. I was in Miami. Jessica was with me. Was she? I asked, pulling my phone from my pocket. I swiped to a photo Frank had taken. It was a crystal-clear shot of her and Julian, holding hands, walking along a pier at sunset. Her face was tilted up to his, her expression adoring. I placed the phone on the table next to the file. The sight of the photo broke her. The lies crumbled, and the rage surfaced. "You spied on me? You had me followed? What kind of sick person does that?" she shrieked, her voice rising. "The kind of person who wants to know why his wife abandoned their newborn daughter to fly across the world with another man," I replied, my tone still level. "I didn't abandon her. I left her with you. Her father. You lied to me, Chloe. You took what you thought was my money and you spent it on him." The argument devolved from there. She screamed. She cried. She accused me of being controlling, of holding her back, of being a boring, unambitious man who would never be good enough for her. I let her exhaust herself. I didn't raise my voice once. When she finally ran out of steam, sobbing at the table, I stood up. "A man will be by tomorrow morning at 10 to serve you with divorce papers," I said. "He'll wait while you pack a bag. I suggest you call your mother. You'll need a place to stay." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You're kicking me out? You can't do that. This is my house too." "No, it isn't," I said. "I bought it 2 years before we met. It's in my name only. You'll find that all the legalities have been handled." I turned and walked into the nursery, closing the door gently behind me. The sound of her renewed screaming muffled as I checked on my sleeping daughter. The next few weeks were a blur of legal maneuvers. Chloe, now living with her mother, hired a lawyer who immediately went on the offensive. They filed a response demanding the house, primary custody of Lily, substantial child support, and punishing alimony. Her lawyer's letters were filled with accusations. I was a neglectful workaholic, emotionally abusive, and using my meager income to control her. They were building a narrative of a downtrodden wife escaping a suffocating marriage. It was all according to David's plan. "Let them," he'd said with a grin. "Let them put it all in writing. Every demand they make based on their false assumptions will make their collapse that much more spectacular." As predicted, Julian Croft was gone. As soon as he was contacted for a deposition, he vanished. His phone was disconnected. Chloe was left high and dry, her fantasy upgrade revealed as a fraud. This sent her into a new spiral of desperation. She started calling me, leaving tearful, pleading voicemails. "Marcus, I made a terrible mistake," she'd cry. "I was confused. I miss you. I miss our family. We can work this out. Please don't do this to me. To us." I never answered. I saved every message as further evidence of her manipulative nature. The day of the mediation arrived. We gathered in the same large conference room in David's firm. I was there with David. Chloe was there with her lawyer, a smug-looking man named Peterson, and her mother, Eleanor, who sat beside her, patting her hand and glaring at me as if I were a monster. Peterson began, laying out their case with theatrical flair. He painted a portrait of Chloe as a devoted new mother who had suffered a momentary lapse in judgment due to postpartum stress, egged on by a controlling, unsupportive husband. He went on and on about the sacrifices she had made. "Therefore," he concluded, puffing out his chest, "we are demanding the marital home be signed over to Ms. Hayes, primary physical custody of their daughter, $5,000 a month in child support, and $10,000 a month in alimony for a period of 10 years so that she can get back on her feet." Eleanor nodded sagely, as if these demands were perfectly reasonable. Chloe looked at me, a flicker of her old arrogance returning to her eyes. David let the silence hang in the air for a moment before he spoke. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson," he said calmly. "That's a very creative version of events." He then proceeded to systematically dismantle their entire narrative. He started with a large bound folder. "This is the report from our private investigator," he said, sliding a copy across the table. "It contains detailed records of your client's 10-day trip to the Maldives with Mr. Julian Croft, a trip booked 6 weeks in advance. It includes photographs, receipts, and sworn statements from resort staff. I don't think any judge would characterize this as a momentary lapse." Peterson's smug look faltered as he flipped through the pages. Chloe went pale. "Furthermore," David continued, "regarding custody, my client has been the sole caregiver for his daughter since Ms. Hayes abandoned her. We have logs of every feeding, every diaper change, and multiple character witness statements attesting to his fitness as a parent. In contrast, we have your client's own text messages showing a profound lack of interest in her child's welfare during her absence." He slid across another file. This one contained their financial disclosures. Peterson glanced at my stated income, a modest salary for a lead framer, and scoffed. "My client's demands for support are based on the standard of living she is accustomed to," Peterson said, trying to regain his footing. "Your client's income, while respectable for a tradesman, will need to be garnished significantly to meet his obligations." This was the moment. David leaned forward, a shark-like smile on his face. "This is where you seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation, counselor." He placed a final, thick document on the table. "These are the articles of incorporation for Marcus Construction, LLC, a company valued at its last audit at just over $15 million. You see, Marcus doesn't work for the company. He is the company. He's the sole owner." A dead silence fell over the room. Peterson stared at the document as if it were written in a foreign language. Chloe's jaw literally dropped. Eleanor's perfectly made-up face went slack with shock. "His personal income last year after taxes was just under $900,000, David said, his voice as sharp as glass. "The house you're demanding is a premarital asset, owned free and clear by my client. The liquid assets in the joint account were moved into a separate trust for his daughter after your client began illegally dissipating them on her extramarital affair. As for alimony," David paused for effect, "given the short duration of the marriage and the documented, flagrant infidelity, your client will receive none. 0". Chloe stared at me, her eyes wide with horrified comprehension. The man she had disdained, the simple framer in the dusty boots, the man who wasn't good enough. It was all a lie. She hadn't just cheated on her husband. She had thrown away a life of unimaginable wealth and security. The scale of her miscalculation was so immense, it was crushing her right there at the table. "As for child support," David concluded, "my client will, of course, provide for his daughter. He is offering to set up a trust in her name, into which he will deposit $20,000 a month. Ms. Hayes will have no access to these funds. For her part, given her willful unemployment, the state will likely require her to pay a nominal amount of child support to my client, the custodial parent." The mediator, a retired judge who had watched the entire exchange without expression, finally spoke. "Mr. Peterson," he said, his voice gravelly, "I suggest you take your client into the other room and advise her to accept the settlement offer Mr. Chun will be providing. Because if this goes before a judge, I can assure you, based on the evidence I've seen here today, she will walk away with significantly less than what's being offered, and she will be lucky to get supervised visitation with her child." That's when Chloe finally broke. It wasn't a sob. It was a raw, guttural scream of pure loss. "No!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You did this. You tricked me. You let me believe you were poor." "I never lied to you, Chloe," I said, speaking for the first time. "You just never bothered to ask the right questions. You saw what you wanted to see." Her mother, Eleanor, looked like she had seen a ghost. All her condescending advice, all her pushing Chloe to find someone better, had led to this. She had coached her daughter into sabotaging a winning lottery ticket. I stood up, David slid the settlement agreement across the table. It was generous, more than she deserved, giving her a small lump sum to start over. It was my final act of severing ties. "Sign it or don't," I said. "It makes no difference to me." I turned and walked out of the conference room, not looking back. I could hear her screaming my name, a sound that was a mix of rage and despair, but it faded as I walked down the hall. I stepped out of the office building and into the bright afternoon sun. Felt like I could breathe again. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for months was finally gone. I hadn't won. There are no winners in a situation like this. But I had protected my daughter. I had secured our future. I had excised the cancer from my life. That evening, I was on the floor in the living room, building a tower of soft blocks for Lily. She was 5 months old now, babbling and grabbing for everything, her eyes bright with curiosity. The house was quiet, filled only with the sounds of my daughter's happy noises. My phone buzzed. It was a text from David. She signed, "It's over." I put the phone down and looked at Lily. I pulled her into my arms and held her close, burying my face in her soft hair. The legal battle was finished, but my real work was just beginning. Building a life for her, a good life, one based on honesty, integrity, and love, not on appearances or the hollow pursuit of more. Some people spend their whole lives looking over the fence, convinced the grass is greener on the other side. They're so busy looking for something shiny and new that they fail to see the gold mine they're standing on. Chloe had made her choice. She chose the illusion of wealth over the reality of it, a fleeting affair over a lifetime of devotion. Her downfall wasn't my victory. It was the natural consequence of her own character. I had simply stepped out of the way and let her fall. And as I sat there, with my daughter safe in my arms, I felt a quiet, profound peace. We were going to be just fine.